Welcome back to the Committee on Ben. We welcome two more guests, Eric Alterman and Guy Maxtone Graham. Eric is a columnist for The Nation. He has written 10 books and won the Stephen Crane Literary Award. Guy Maxtone Graham has had a varied career in television, ranging from staff writer for Beavis and Butthead to story producer and field producer for True TV's Impractical Jokers. Eric and Guy, welcome. Let's start off by talking about reality TV. Now, reality television is often controversial. It's brought us Project Runway contestants making dresses out of root vegetables, and it brought us the Kardashians. We have with us today a longtime writer and producer of reality television, Guy Maxtone Graham. And Guy, you worked on a viral video show and Impractical Jokers. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Sure. Well, I think Impractical Jokers on True TV is the most famous of the two of those. And that was a lot of fun. It's a hidden camera show and reality TV, both together are just two areas where anything can happen. You have to prepare for anything. As a field producer for Impractical Jokers, I had to be prepared for just every possible eventuality because some of the stars of our show didn't know they were going to be on TV when they walked in front of our cameras. So you have to plan for just everything that could possibly go wrong. I felt sometimes like I was responsible for the weather on a shoot day because so many things that could possibly go south. I was famous for bringing in not contestants. I was famous for bringing in victims of our pranks who didn't know what experience they were going to have. So I'd set up a phony company online and place ads and put flyers and get people to come into a space, maybe expecting a finance seminar, and then they'd get pranked by the four stars of that show. But you'd have to overbook, but not overbook so much that it would be a nightmare. So it was challenging, but just run and gun television was a lot of fun too.
Well, we get to see the successes when you set something like that up. Do you have any that just don't go anywhere?
Well, we would run the same prank or the same bit over and over again in the course of a day. So there'd be a lot of times when things wouldn't go well at all. But you know, or things would go great and people wouldn't sign a release form afterwards, so you can't use them. One of my most famous moments as field producer was running up from the basement control room to the set where they had gotten somebody who only spoke French to engage in just like the world's longest handshake, and he didn't know like why he was being asked to shake his hand. It's like that was the bit, and it was very funny, and they wanted to sign him. And I heard over the walkie-talkies that who speaks French? Who speaks French? I thought somebody in like of the 10 people, PAs and so on, who were upstairs would be able to do that, but nobody did. So I ran up and just, remembering grade school French, just explained it to him in 5 minutes and got him to sign, and got a standing ovation when I went back downstairs. So that was like a 10-hour day, but my 5 minutes of speaking French was the biggest contribution I made all day.
It saved it. Well, you're famous also for writing for Beavis and Butthead. What was that like?
That was a very different experience, a lot of fun. I heard about the show just when it was first being created for MTV, but before it became a huge hit. And I sent in 10 ideas. I had a fax number for the head writer at that time, and just sent in 10 ideas for episodes. 2 of them became freelance episodes. And one day I came home and had a message on my voicemail from Mike Judge saying, "Hey, everybody loves your work. You know, keep up the great work." And I knew MTV was putting together a writing staff just for Beavis and Butthead, something they usually didn't do in those days. They just wanted to have their regular promo writers write for it. But they were putting together a special staff. And I called Mike back and said, you know, I was basically my own agent at that point, and said, you know, if you feel that way about me, you should put me on staff. And he just hectored MTV into hiring me, and that was 2 years on staff. It was really fun.
Well, considering MTV was such a cultural phenomenon then, and so was that show.
I would go to a party and people would I'd become like a mini celebrity when they heard that I was writing for that show. So the mid-90s were very, very good time.
Did you put your feet up thinking you'll never have to work hard again?
Well, they didn't pay residuals, so I didn't have that illusion, but I felt pretty popular, and yeah, it was a really fun show and a great place to channel all my at least mature thoughts.
So if young people were interested in starting out, Based on your experience, what would you suggest to them if they want to produce television?
If you want to write comedy, I would say these days it seems like just have your own like YouTube channel, put stuff that's funny up on the air, and people will discover it, and you'll get hits. And there's shows like I'm blanking on there. There's a lot of popular shows now that started as like online only shows. So I think that's the route. When I was doing it, you write sample sitcom scripts and send those around to just persuade people that you're funny. I guess you could also, if you're in college, get an internship for MTV or with a production company and work up that way. But I think as a writer, if you just can write funny material and just keep writing funny stuff and try to get something viral on YouTube, and that's the best route. Everybody has a different route though, so it's hard to.
Would you encourage someone to go into reality TV, or would you counsel them against it?
If you like the thrill of the chase, if somebody should in their early 20s get work as a production assistant, a PA, and see if they like that world. That's the best way to get a taste for it.
Well, you had such soaring success.
Mm-hmm.
How would you rate that opposite you must have had disappointments.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's very hard to succeed in scripted television. Around 2000, that's when I made a shift to reality TV.
Mm-hmm.
And basically I interviewed to write some bumpers for a college cable channel called the Burly Bear Network. And 2 weeks later I got hired to produce a hidden camera show for them. So the head of programming must have just seen something in me that I didn't even know was there. But then I was writing, and as a producer, I've sort of had the same skill set as a writer, but I wasn't actually writing scripts. I was just sort of dreaming up pranks that we could play, and going around like NYU and Columbia and other places to prank college students, because it was a college cable channel. So that kind of led to other hidden camera and other reality work. It's hard to find a sort of rhyme or reason for my career. It's just at each point I've worked on shows that seemed exciting and interesting to me. So,
I was going to say, for somebody starting out, what would you say that was most important, skill or luck?
Well, you got to focus. They're both important, but you got to focus on polishing your skills, because you can't really. There's no instructions you can give as far as luck goes. So you just have to work on the skill part of it and hope for the best.
Very good. Well, Eric, let me bring you into the conversation. What's your take on reality TV?
I feel like you're setting me up here to be the old fuddy-duddy here, but I think it's a sign of the decline of Western civilization, such as it is. When I was growing up, when I was a kid, and we had 3 channels, and I would watch Candid Camera. That was okay. It was one show. It wasn't mean. It was all in good fun. But I think reality TV. I should preface this by saying I don't watch much of it, so you can ignore me on the basis of my ignorance. But it strikes me as an awful lot of it is about humiliating people. Sometimes it's people volunteering to be humiliated because they're so desperate to be recognized by a larger public and to feel like they matter in some way, and TV vindicates them, and so they engage in their own humiliation, which is doubly humiliating in my view. And it's very cheap to produce because you don't have to pay writers, and the production costs are much less. So whenever they have a hit on reality TV, they beat it to death. The costs end up rising when people get famous, like the Kardashians or like those crazy housewives they have in every city. I did watch the first season of the Housewives show. A friend of mine was involved in it, and I found it entertaining for a while, but then I felt like I was debasing myself by watching it, because these were very vulgar people having arguments that were very distasteful, and it was really none of my business. And it's, TV was called a wasteland back in the 50s by Newton Minow, the first FEC commissioner. And so it's kind of ridiculous now to be complaining about its quality. But everything can get worse. And I'd be hard pressed to find, I'm sure there are exceptions, and again, I don't really watch it, But I'd be hard-pressed to find any way in which reality TV has improved television. It's not good for writers. Writers used to make a living in Hollywood. Now they work as waiters. One big reason for that is reality TV. Not the only reason, but it's one big reason. So I wish it would go away. It's not going to go away, but you asked me and I'm telling you.
Well, Steven Spielberg seemed to echo what you're saying too, that the premise behind reality TV is people who want to be the star, drawing attention to themselves. Is that really?
Yes, and I mean, I don't mind people wanting to be a star and drawing attention to themselves. Bruce Springsteen wanted to be a star and drew attention to himself, but it's the lack of talent. It's the lack of any, it's just there are exceptions. Like, I don't watch The Voice or America's whatever, but those people get a chance to show their talent, and they have talent, and that's a good thing. It has problems with it, because it's done some bad things for the music industry, but I got no problem with people, undiscovered people, showing their talent. But so much of this is just about, this pranking thing. It's funny for everybody but the person who's pranked. Occasionally it's funny for the person who's pranked. But my guess is it's just the desperation that people have for any sort of fame or recognition from the public leads them into situations that are kind of inhuman. And I don't like it.
Can I respond to that?
Yes.
I certainly agree with Eric. There's a lot of reality TV shows, The Biggest Loser and so on, that are just about humiliating people. And I haven't worked at any of those shows, and I don't watch them. What I like about Impractical Jokers in particular, it's about 4 best friends since high school. They're now mid-30s. And they're basically putting each other in uncomfortable situations.
Okay, that's different than what I was talking about. I'll give you that. No,
one of them is out there.
I'm supposed to interrupt you.
Okay. Well.
I'm clarifying the fact that I wasn't talking about that kind of thing. I was talking about where people are innocent victims. So I didn't want to imply that I was talking about what you did.
Okay.
But continue.
I do think they have the perfect formula for a hidden camera show, because it's 3 guys pranking basically one of their own and putting him in an uncomfortable situation where he maybe has to be like the world's worst bartender. And you don't feel that bad for him having to make a fool of himself with the customers in a bar who are all, rolling their eyes and just can't believe what an idiot he is, because he, in the previous segment, was making one of his other 3 buddies look bad. So I think they've come up with, I appreciate what you're saying, Eric, about there's some just cringe-inducing reality shows that I just couldn't watch either. But I think they found a very good formula where you're rooting for one of these 4 guys to be like embarrassed and humiliated because he's got it coming. He was doing it to one of them in the previous one.
And we should note that the reality shows aren't entirely on smaller networks. All of the major commercial networks right now have a reality format.
Sure.
Every single one of them. Have we reached a saturation point, do you think?
I don't think there's any end in sight. As Eric was saying, it's cheaper to produce than scripted shows. And people think that, it must be scripted because they do have, writers on reality shows, but the writers are coming up with stuff for the voiceover and so on to say the stars, the reality TV stars, are not such good actors that they could deliver a script convincingly. But you just they put in ridiculous situations and they're acting like themselves. But I was never a fan of Jersey Shore or the vulgar housewives shows.
Well, someone made a point before about the network movie about reality TV, and the plot to that film, a 70s film, was the suicide, and they were going to make ratings on that. Did it foreshadow the future, you think?
I show that movie I teach a history of journalism class, and I show that movie too. It was written by Patty Chayefsky. It starred, I think, William Holden and Faye Dunaway, if I'm not mistaken. It's a great movie. That was a movie about the media at the time, and the media having no moral standards. And to the degree that it was prophetic, it was prophetic in the sense that things can always get worse. So we look back on the 70s as a time when we had much higher moral standards and higher standards for entertainment in many ways. Now, that rubs up against the fact that we are in the golden age of television. I watched the second last episode of Mad Men this morning, and I think it's a great work of literature, and it's not alone. So we've got a real division between high and low in television right now. And as you say, the networks are willing. They can call it round or they can call it flat as long as the profits come in. So in this respect, I think this humiliation thing can only get worse. I mean, there was one show on Fox. It didn't do very well, where it was called Who Wants to Marry a Multimillionaire, and they just had women throwing themselves at rich guys so that they could get their money. It was disgusting. They were prostituting themselves. I have a teenage daughter. I don't mind her seeing sex in the context of a relationship and love and so forth, or seeing social problems, but modeling this kind of behavior, it really shocks and horrifies me, and I'm not easily shocked.
Guy, let me give you one more shot at this. If you were producing a brand new thing now, do you give the networks or the agency what they want, or do you try to lead them to something better? What works when you want to be successful?
The networks are writing the checks, so eventually they have the final say. You try and bring them fresh new ideas that you hope they'll like, but the notion that a producer who's not Steven Spielberg could come to them and force a network to put something they didn't want to put on the air is a little ridiculous. I think we're in for a lot more vulgar reality television shows until America gets sick of them or tires of wanting to be the next reality star themselves. I just think it's a very broad spectrum, and the performance shows like American Idol are in a totally different corner from the hidden camera shows and the humiliation shows. It's just reality is now a catch-all for anything that's not scripted.
Very good. Well, I'm going to try my best not to be vulgar and say stay with us. This is BEN, and I'm Pat Sheldon. In our upcoming segment, our panelists discuss whether actor James Franco was right to defend McDonald's based on his time serving fries as a young actor.